What up, guys? It's Bananaowns here, bringing you part 45 of my Skyward Sword Let's Play. And we're 5 away from 50. We've been playing this game for a really long time. I think probably over, I don't know, maybe 12 hours of video on the YouTube playlist already. That's a fucking long time. And then factor in all I'm doing these voiceovers post-recording, and just holy shit, I've been spending so much time doing this, and I've been having a lot of fun though. It's a very interesting, new skill to learn. So anyway, these next couple of videos are just going to be some side quests and collectibles. It's not too terribly exciting, but hey, it's got to be done. So I'm gonna warn you already that don't expect me to talk a lot about Zelda right now, or at least not a lot about what I'm actually doing in this video. Basically, all I'm doing is flying, and in this video we're going to go to the Isle of Songs again and take care of that out of the way and activate a little side quest in which we'll unlock a mini game. So that's basically the plan here. And this video is going to be a little bit long. Awkward little voice tick there. Ugh, I couldn't say what I wanted to say. I had like a seizure. That was weird. But so these next couple videos aren't going to be the most exciting gameplay wise. So I apologize for that already. But hey, I'm going to try to at least entertain you. I'm not, as I mentioned earlier, I'm not going to probably be talking about what's going on in the video too much. It'll be more of a random voice log, because I think the video content could use some assistance. So I was really thinking about this game and its dungeons and overall its total impact. I know we've gone through 5 dungeons already and there's 2 more, so I'm not going to reserve my basically final review of the game until after the last dungeon, because I have some nitpicks of this game, but I really like it, and it's fucking great. But yeah, there's a couple issues. For the most part, the dungeons so far pretty freaking good. Let's see. We started off with the Skyview Temple, which was the intro dungeon of the game, and it was fairly easy, but didn't have a lot going for it, making it stand out compared to other opening Zelda dungeons, where you have your great Deku Tree, your what is it, the Swamp Temple from Majora's Mask, the first one, kind of similar, kind of like a woodland thing, but hey, whatever. And then let's see here, compared to Wind Waker, Dragon Roost Cavern, Wind Waker, that's a great first dungeon. So I really wanted to talk about all the dungeons of Skyward Sword in general, but I'm going to first start off with just really talking about first Zelda dungeons. I'm doing this off the top of my head, so hopefully I can come up with something that's pretty smart and very interesting to talk about. So first Zelda dungeons always usually are pretty great and do a really good job of introducing you to some game mechanics. I would say I don't want to be too cliche, but the Deku Tree in Ocarina of Time was fucking great. That was the perfect example of a first dungeon. Because, first of all, you get in the dungeon, I don't know, maybe 5 minutes into the game. I think you spend more time watching cutscenes than it does to actually take you to get into the dungeon. So it's maybe the first 15 minutes of the game, which I really enjoy, because Zelda games are about getting into dungeons and getting your sword fast, and I really enjoy it just because how quickly it moved in. The Great Deku Tree was like, bitch, there's something inside me that's killing me. I want to see if you can get it, and I'm cursed, so go help me. And it really introduced you to, especially considering that was the first 3D Zelda. I know it's eye-opening to look back at that today. It's almost, oh god, it's been a really long time since, what was that, 95 was when that came out, so we're, fuck man, that's a super long time. But anyway, so that was the first 3D Zelda game. And if you hear this police siren, I'm very sorry now, I can't control that. But so that was the first 3D Zelda game. And it's absolutely amazing what they're able to do with that first dungeon. So let's think about this for a second. You enter in this Deku tree, and this is your first maybe 10 or so minutes, well, depending on how fast you found the Kokiri sword and got the shield, but this is like you're in at least your first like hour of the game, and you're entering the first dungeon. And then you playing this, and it just naturally tells you like what to do. Like, oh look, there's a ladder. Okay, oh, there's a dungeon map, and okay, so this is how this works. Oh, we got a slingshot, so this is how aiming works in this mode. And overall, it was just absolutely great. It's especially introducing some later dungeon concepts, like using the Deku later dungeon. Technically, since you did it earlier, but like introducing concepts like using the Deku sticks as torches, and especially that first jump off of that high ledge into the little spider web to destroy it. That's fucking genius. It was such a great first dungeon, and it was a great start to the whole 3D Zelda games as a whole. So let's go to Majora's Mask now for 3D dungeons. Now the Swampfall Temple, of course, Majora's Mask is a completely different beast than Ocarina of Time, except for the fact that they're just both on the I can't talk. Except for the fact that they're both on the Nintendo 64 and use a lot of the same assets. But compared to Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask, you get into the first dungeon a decent ways into the game. Not as long as, let's say, you know what? It might be as long as I would say this game, maybe, depending on what your play style is. Especially if, like, you haven't figured out the whole first 3 days thing and what you're supposed to do there. A lot of waiting involved in that first little bit. So when you reach I think it's the Woodfall Temple is what I want to call it. It's a swamp temple, basically, and that is a great opening dungeon as well, because you've been playing through like this whole area. You did this whole first day cycle thing. You're introduced to the mechanics, and then you finally get to actually explore the world afterwards, after you become a human again, after you get the Deku mask. So obviously the dungeons Majora's Mask are themed after the mask, except for I'd say the Ikanon one. The first three are. The first one you mostly use a Deku, the second one is mostly Goron, and the third one's mostly Zora. So for this first introductory temple, Majora's Mask, it was fucking great, because you were using the Deku mask and learning this new gameplay mechanics, and the dungeon just filled with that. And also, you get the bow actually fairly early on in the game, which I really enjoyed as well. And it's just really well designed again, because it's not the most difficult dungeon, but it does propose like somewhat of a challenge, especially when Majora's Mask, they have the whole concept of the fairies, and so you can get a little extra reward in the dungeons, each one of the dungeons. That's really worth it, especially I would say the great, I'd say they're all pretty much worth it. I think the Snow Peak Temple, you get a double magic meter, and then the Great Barrier Temple, or Great Bay Temple. The Great Bay Temple, you get the little heart shields that let you take more damage, and then the fourth one, you get a Great Fairy Sword, which is a really powerful sword. So that intro to Majora's Mask, that dungeon, introducing new mechanics as well, and then those games don't hold your hands as much as this game does, but they still just naturally teach you, and they're just well done. Almost every single Zelda dungeon, the first one, is just so well done, and introduces you to the mechanics of the game without having to actually say a lot and do tutorial, which is something that I dislike about this game, the constant hand-holding. As you see, just like right now, you had like Fee basically just explaining to you, this is what you do, this is what you do, this is what you do, and it's really annoying. So bringing us into, if we continue our journey along through opening 3D Zelda dungeons. So we move on to Wind Waker next. And Wind Waker, as a whole, the game is really, really easy. There's not a lot of challenge there, but the first dungeon was very memorable. It was the Dragon Roost Cavern. Oh, Dragon Roost. I think I'm getting. It was just on Dragon Roost anywhere, and it was basically like a Death Mountain-esque sort of dungeon, where it was a fire temple basically. But in this cavern, you get a grappling hook, and it really is. It doesn't stand out as much to the other Zelda games. Mainly, I don't know. I don't know what it is, because I think Wind Waker, its strength is in. I don't know. The dungeons are all well designed. There's just nothing that really just stands out to me. I think the later temples of the game. I think after. Okay, yeah. I think after you get all the pearls and you go to the Tower of Gods. That's when the temples start getting all the dungeons start getting really, really more difficult and are much more like well designed as a whole. So Dragon Roost, not particularly memorable. It's still well designed. I think one of the boss fight was one of the more memorable aspects of that dungeon, because you use your grappling hook to pull down the ceiling onto his head to crack his armor, and then so you can attack his eye, which is really, really cool actually. So yeah, a lot of dungeons can get a little bit of boost from having a very memorable boss, which, pay attention, Nintendo, you know this stuff already though. Like, let's see, I'm gonna go back to Ocarina of Time for a second. Goma, and I've never felt so scared facing a boss, and that was the first boss of the game. It's this fucking creepy, like, spider bug thing that's crawling on the walls. You have to shoot your slingshot, and like the panic is when it like lurched up, and you had to quickly get a shot off on its eye to stun it. And then what was it, Adawala? I have no idea. Like in Majora's Mask, I don't have no idea how to say his name, but he's like a jungle warrior, and it was so different and so memorable. And then Wind Waker, I don't even know what his name is anymore, but it's like that giant like armored scorpion thing that's like riding in lava. Very memorable as well. So let's continue moving along through these 3D Zeldas. So Twilight Princess, again, another well-designed first dungeon. My main problem with Twilight Princess was just exactly how long it takes to get to the first dungeon. You're playing the game for like 3 hours before you get there, because let's see, you have to do all the intro stuff, and then the twilight comes and you get turned into a wolf, and then you have to escape the castle, and then acquire a sword and a shield, visit the first light spring, go to the next area, become a wolf again, go to light vessels, then finally become human again, and then make your way back through the swamp again to finally reach the first like forest temple. Although the temple itself is actually very well designed. A very interesting puzzle mechanic, rescuing monkeys. And monkeys are always fucking cool to me, so I really enjoy that temple for that reason. And then it expounds upon the standard Zelda item, the boomerang, where you get the Gale boomerang, and the boss battle really uses the Gale boomerang. You have to launch bombs into this monster's mouth so you can, well, get it to fall down, so you can attack it with your sword. So again, really interesting mechanic. And then the mini boss as well was very great. The giant baboon that was actually using the Gale boomerang. It's very rare to have a mini boss use the items against you, and you have to defeat it in order to get the item. I think Twilight Princess did that a couple times actually. So it's the baboon with the Gale boomerang, and then it's the one lizard moblin in the Snow Peak ruins that has the ball and chain, which they both use it against you. So that's really, really cool and very interesting puzzle mechanic. And so that first Twilight Princess dungeon, I remember, I've talked about this before, but I remember the hype for Twilight Princess. I was full on in the hype. I watched that first E3 trailer and was just blown away, and I was waiting for like years to finally play this game. And when I finally got to play it, I think the first day I got it, I didn't get to play it until like maybe like 6 in the evening, and then I beat the first dungeon in the first day. So I beat the dungeon the first day, and then I looked at my clock, and it was like 2 in the morning. I played it for so long. It was absolutely like insane, but that dungeon will always be very memorable. I would say on par with Ocarina of Time, and basically all these Zelda games are memorable to me, especially the first dungeon. Those are the ones that really set the mood of the game. So that brings me to this Skyward Sword dungeon, first dungeon, the Skyview Temple, and it doesn't have a lot that really sets it apart. There's no really interesting puzzle mechanic. It's just kind of there to test some basic skills like walking across a tightrope, or just getting you used to basic motion controls with like killing the spiders and flipping them over. So basically, it just doesn't stand out too much, and it's a shame, because basically every dungeon after the Skyview Temple I really enjoy, except for the Fire Sanctuary is kind of meh to me, just because of how linear it is, and it's basically like a straight line, and it kind of bothers me for that reason. But the Skyview Temple, really good in it, and it's different in the sense that I'm complaining about there's like no like unique puzzle mechanics, but what I really enjoy is just how different it is when you face the boss. The boss of the Skyview Temple is Girahim, which is different because usually in Zelda dungeons you use whatever item you get from the dungeon in order to beat the boss. Like, so going back down the list in Ocarina of Time, you use the slingshot to take out Goma. In Majora's Mask, you could use the bow. The bow is actually kind of useful against Otawala, but it was mostly a swordsmanship battle. But still, you use the bow, and it was actually useful. In Wind Waker, you actually use the grappling hook, and it was a very main part of the boss battle. And then in Twilight Princess, the Gale Boomerang, again, very main part of the boss battle. In this game, you face off against Girahim in a 1v1 sword battle, which it's different than other Zelda games, but it's really good because I think I was talking about a lack of a puzzle mechanic, but I think that's why if the temple isn't memorable itself, then just at least the boss fight's memorable, because you're getting used to these sword motion controls for the first time, actually having to time your strikes, because you've just been facing off against moblins earlier, but in this case you have an armed enemy that has a pretty decent AI, can follow your movements, and that's just really cool. It's the whole like first time you really get grasping these motion controls and how it changes the combat in the game, which is really, really cool, and it's really eye-opening. I know like a lot of people, you either love the motion controls or you hate them. I really love them. It's just at times it gets annoying with the calibration. By the way, I just like to point out there's a Tingle doll on the desk right there. I'm sorry about that. But just anyway, like I really enjoy these motion controls. It just annoys me how every now and then it's unresponsive, especially when you're turning the Wiimote in certain directions. It just doesn't pick it up that well, and it gets really frustrating sometimes. But anyway, Skyward Sword is just great. The first dungeon, while not particularly memorable in its puzzle-solving aspects, has a very memorable boss fight. That's why there is all this footage before this game came out of the Skyview Temple. I think that's what they demoed, was the Skyview Temple and the boss fight with Girahim at the end, just to show off what this game can offer. Well, anyway, that concludes this episode, guys, so see you later.